So what are some ways that, startup could actually increase defensibility, of their network effects?
Eighth question, I mean, you can go back actually on all the previous 7 ones, and you can say, well, if the answers to one of those questions was not satisfactory, so let's say the switching costs were, the multi-homing costs were low, you can ask, well, how can you make the multi-homing cost higher? So that's one way to increase defensibility. Again, you're the first mover. Now I want to raise the multi-homing cost because, well, everyone else makes it difficult for everyone else to come in. I can also increase both switching and multi-homing costs. So I can get maybe so how do I increase those? Well, generally speaking, the more I can get users to spend time and to invest resources in customizing their experience on my platform, the less likely they are that they're going to use a second platform. The more they learn, the more they put stuff that's personalized, they're not going to use a second platform. Then another example would be so back to the coordination issue. Anything I can do to make coordination harder. So if people don't think about coordination, one way to think about it is let's make discovery very important. So the more people come to my platform to discover new transaction interaction partners, the better that is for defensibility. Again, I'm the first mover. I want people to come here to basically discover, buyers to discover new sellers and sellers to discover new buyers. The more that happens, there's very little chance that a second mover comes in and is going to be able to get them, because they know, well, I can get all the buyers that I need there and I can get all the sellers I need on the other platform. Why would I move to a new entrant?
Well, so on the second one, thinking about increasing discoverability, I think that's a very real option for a lot of startups. Like they are building, say, our fitness instructor platform, right? A lot of them just focused on getting fitness instructors on board and using their clientele to build the network, which is fine. Like that's a way to grow quickly. But if they really want to be defensible, they have to sort of turn on that discoverability part. They have to enable the users to discover new, maybe in a different area of fitness, new instructors, right? Make it a destination where people come to discover the new instructors, and make it a place where instructors want to come to where they can get new users. And then it becomes much more defensible. So it's really deciding whether they want to do that and opening it up to discoverability. We see this on, we see this on online courses as well. Right? Like online courses, they can just be providing tools for instructors to provide these classes. Teachable is a platform that does that, right? And we talked about, I think, this in products and platforms, right? They can open that up to discoverability. They can open up a way for their students to discover other courses, right? And then it becomes a place that people come to find out and discover new courses they want to take. And then it becomes a very popular place for instructors to come to get new students, right? And that is a very real option that these firms face, these startups face when they're building, right? Do I want to enable that discoverability? And that does, the plus side of that is the defensibility that it creates.
Before we go to the fifth question, right? Because you have a key distinction that you say that the last four questions that we have talked about, it's really about the strength of the network effects. And the next three that we're going to talk about are really about defensibility. Can you just quickly talk about what is the difference? I'm thinking that if it's strong network effect, it just means good defensibility. So what is the subtle difference between the two?
Yeah, the defensibility we already mentioned several times. You can see there's a pretty blurry line between these two. But I mean, broadly, the idea was in those first questions, in some sense, we're talking about what is the potential, right? What is the potential you can reach? And we're trying to understand that. You may be able to reach very high potential in terms of growing business through network effect, like Zoom. Zoom has massive network effects and it's grown very big. But then the question is that defensible? And Uber is another example, right? Uber has strong network effects because you want to join where there are more drivers, and drivers want to join where there are more people looking for rides. So strong network effects, but how defensible is it? And so that's where the next questions come in. We're sort of asking, okay, even though there may be very strong network effects, it doesn't necessarily mean it's very defensible business.
I agree. I would add, so I think the right sort of, I've done this with students over the past few days, and it just occurred to me, like a good metaphor to have in mind is the following. So of course they're related. There's no question that if the network effect is stronger, maybe defensibility is higher, but they're certainly not equivalent. I mean, I think that's Julian's point, and it's very important. It's very possible that you have extremely valuable, extremely strong network effects. But let's say, what if it's very easy, like there's no switching cost, like everyone can multi-home on multiple platforms at no cost whatsoever? Well, there's not a lot of defensibility. So it's possible to have very strong network effects, but not very different. So the way I think about defensibility is like, I show students like, I showed them a castle on top of a mountain, and it's basically defensibility. Obviously, comes from like the metaphor comes from war. So it's this idea that it's not about like how good my features are relative to my opponents, but it's basically what you're looking for in defensibility is like, is there something inherent in the position that I'm occupying that makes it harder for the second mover to come beat me? So obviously, if I put my army on top of a hill, I don't have to be better than my opponent. Just by virtue of being on top of a hill, I just have an advantage relative to the next army along.
Okay, so maybe another way to say, if I understand this correctly, is that if it has strong network effects, the potentiality that this business will be a good and strong market, as you say, potential of the market itself is a good potential market and business that will occupy a valuable and big enough market. A business in a big and a valuable market itself, right? But if it is not highly defensible in terms of its network effect, is that probably it will become a duopoly, or it will become a multiple players that's in this valuable market, right? Because for example, Airbnb, highly defensible and strong, but possibly highly defensible, and that's the reason why you don't have another similar player around, for the matter. But Uber, highly variable and highly strong, network effects. Therefore, it's a good company, good valuable market, high growth. But then you have a lot of different players, they are in the same market because it's highly not defensible. The defensibility is not as strong. Is that how?
I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. Like the network effects of the market may be very strong, but it doesn't mean an individual player can therefore monopolize it, right? It's not necessarily going to tip to one player if it's not a very defensible kind of network effect, right? And you see Clubhouse would be another example where it looks like there's pretty good network effects, there's discoverability and so on, but it's actually not very defensible because it's easy to copy.